Good afternoon. My name is Michael Latshaw, and I'm the marketing manager here at CTI. I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar on data loss prevention, eliminating the human error, which is a co-presentation between Consolidated Technologies Inc. and Trustify. So now I'll turn the presentation over to CTI Sales Director Reza Kazaruni, who is taking over today for our Chief Customer Officer, Ben Skulski. Reza?
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank all of you for taking the time and attending our data loss prevention, eliminating the human error webinar. As Michael mentioned, I'm Reza Kazaruni, Director of Sales at CTI, and I'm joined today by Zach Schwartz, VP of Business Development of Trustify. Zach and I have been technology professionals for more than 40 years combined, and CTI has enjoyed a lengthy relationship with Trustify since we like partnering with best-in-breed providers. Both of our companies work together to present real solutions to the pain of our clients, especially around cybersecurity. For those of you unfamiliar with CTI, we're based in the New York metro area and have spent more than a quarter century working with our clients, large and small, to deliver real technology solutions that help our customers succeed. We offer best-in-breed technology, including IP telephony, IT managed services, and we've been a pioneer in the UCaaS and cloud space. I'll be more than happy to share more about CTI and our services, either at the end of this webinar or on a one-to-one with each and every one of you guys. Now, I'm pleased to turn it over to Zach for the next portion of this presentation.
Reza, thank you so much for that introduction and the continued support and partnership of CTI. You guys are an absolute pleasure to work with. And also thank you for hosting this webinar with us. So a little bit about Trustify. Trustify is a cybersecurity firm. We're delivered as a software as a service platform. And we lead the market with the easiest to use and deploy email security products, providing both in and outbound email security. And when I say in and outbound email security, what I'm talking about is everything from your advanced threat protection, so blocking any sort of malicious activity, emails, links, attachments from coming into your inbox, to outbound, which is what we're going to talk about today in regards to data classification, data loss prevention, and email encryption. And the great thing about the partnership with CTI and Trustify is we make this extremely easy for our partners and our end users to deploy this utilizing CTI managed services. So for today, what we're going to be talking about is, first off, data classification. So how do we classify data? Then once we classify that data, how do we ensure that that very sensitive and important data is not leaving the organization? So what is data loss prevention? And then last but not least, we're going to talk about why it's extremely important to have a strong data loss prevention policy, especially in today's new normal with many remote workforces, people working from home. And then what we're going to do is actually go into a live demo of the product. So we're going to create some rules, some data loss prevention rules in real time within our actual Microsoft Exchange, send out some emails and see what that looks like, so you guys can see what that'll look like for your clients and your partners. So first and foremost, what is data classification? I think this is pretty straightforward, but what really this means, it's the way we classify data based on data type. So what we're doing is we're identifying pertinent data to manage risk or compliance. So for example, that can be anything from credit card information, employee ID, passwords, Bitcoin keys. Really what we're trying to do is take the different compliances. So for example, HIPAA, PCI, GDPR, things that we'll get into in a little bit further down the road in the demo. And then we make sure that any sort of information that is leaving the organization is either blocked from leaving or secured in a manner that is compliant with our, say, our chief compliance officer or whatever compliance we are managed by. So the way that Trustify does this is we classify data in 304 different ways, which is extremely granular. With working with any other data classification or many other data classifications, they'll typically have things from internal email, external email, classified email, things of that nature, very high level. But with Trustify, we get really down into the weeds so we can differentiate all the different data types in there. And then that can give us some extremely useful insight as an IT manager as to what sort of information is leaving our organization via email. So once Trustify classifies this data, we also have a scoring matrix. And we do this in a ratio between 0.0 and 5.0. So every piece of data that leaves the organization, we're going to give a score to it. And the reason we do that is because when creating our rules and policies and determining what sort of data we want to enable to leave and what sort of data we want to block, we can use very simple scoring matrix to determine that for us, rather than having to go through all 304 individual data types and go one by one, determine what is going to be blocked and what's not. Next, what we want to talk about is data loss prevention. So now that we've classified our data, now we need to create a process to ensure that data is not lost, misused, or accessed by unauthorized users. So whether that be internal groups within the organization, external groups, competitors, whatever it may be. So what we're doing is we're identifying the data breaches by monitoring and blocking sensitive data within the organization. And the most important part of this is really what we're doing is we're creating an automated strategy. So it's one thing to release a document out to our users and let them know that, say, no credit card data is allowed to leave the organization via email. But it's a completely another thing to create an automated strategy on the back end with a tool like Trustify, where we don't have to train our users anymore. Us as IT admins can enact a policy. So when a user is sending out or doing their day-to-day work, when they type emails or they send out any data, we're going to automatically protect them on the back end. So whether that is to encrypt the data, whether it's to utilize multi-factor authentication, or to just block the email entirely, we can put that in place in real time and spread that across the entire organization or the entire exchange. And now, what's the real important thing? Why is it important to have a strong data loss prevention policy? First and foremost, human error and risk from a liability standpoint from an organization is extremely important. We can do our trainings as much as we want, but as organizations grow, it's extremely hard to train every single user, be on top of them for every single email, and that's why we need to have an overarching policy in place utilizing a technology like Trustify. And the reason we do this is to eliminate fines, lost revenue, data breaches. Once we do have our information getting out on the public internet, we've seen this happen with many different breaches, whether it be credentials, passwords, credit card information, social security numbers. There are extremely large fines that can be associated with this. And we see this from some of our compliance policies. So things such as GDPR, which is going to be anyone doing any business within the European Union. Things like CCPA, which is the California Consumer Protection Act, which was just released in California. So if we're doing any sort of business in California, it's another extremely important thing to have our data secure. HIPAA, I think, is something that most of us know about. This is dealing with any sort of medical records. And then PII and PCI, so dealing with any personal information or, say, credit card information. So one of the nice things about Trustify, which we'll get into also in the demonstration, is we have pre-built dictionaries. So we don't make it so we have to create these policies on the fly, but we have pre-built packages for you. So it's really just a single click if you do have to be adherent to these different sorts of compliance in order to get them out to your users. And getting into some of the things that are happening today, we see more and more users are working from home. We know from COVID-19, there was one of the largest transitions to a remote workforce. And what that means is workers are starting to work in a different environment. They're working on the private network instead of the corporate network. They're not able to go to their manager or go to their IT manager asking questions, can I send this, can I not? So that's why it's really important that if we have our users on an exchange, a solution like Trustify can protect them whether they're working in the office or from home. And then the last thing I want to leave you with before we get into the demo is a quote from our Chief Technology Officer, and that's protecting the outbox is the first step in securing the inbox. And what that means is in my conversations with CIOs, CISOs, the number one thing that they are worried about is how to stop their users from clicking on emails that come into the organization, whether it be a malicious email, something requesting a wire transfer, W-2s, things of that nature. But what they don't realize is if they don't have a DLP policy in place and they're sending out outbound emails with confidential information in it, hackers can use that information, look at it, see who we're communicating it with, and then use that against us coming back on the inbound. So something to think about when creating our email security policies. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually jump into a live demo. What we're going to do is go into the back end of Trustify, and what we're going to do is create some of our rules and policies. So show you what this looks like in regards to setting up a rule within Trustify. So the way that this works is right now, this is the back end of Trustify. And what we're going to do is we've already created a connector from Trustify to our email exchange, so that Microsoft Outlook window that I just showed you. And what we're going to do is we're going to create some rules. So first what we'll do is see the different types of rules we can create. So we've talked about sensitivity score in the presentation, how we can dictate between 1 and 5 right here. So we see right now we can say if an email has a score of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, then we can choose an action, whether that be to encrypt the content, encrypt our attachments, require multi-factor authentication. We can utilize Trustify's postmark tracking technology. We can also say CC or BCC another user, whether that be a manager, chief legal officer, chief compliance officer, things of that nature. We can also alert our admins, which will send this to a quarantine environment. We can set expirations to our emails, add headers, add footers. We have a slew of different features that we can add to our email. So one of the things to know with Trustify is all of the analytics and all of the customizations that you have around your outbound email with Trustify. Next, what we want to take a look at is sensitivity type. So these are the 304 different ways that we classify data. So here we have things financial, credit card, check information. We have things all over the place. United States vehicle information, Canadian health codes. The list goes on and on. So the 304 are here. So if we want, we can get extremely granular with the types of data, what we want to happen with them. But on top of that, what we can also do is create keywords. So you don't have to only utilize Trustify's DLP classification, but if you're using a third party, or if you have your own internal metrics, so whether that be account numbers, drug names, New York Stock Exchange ticker symbols, we can create these custom dictionaries for you. And then same as before, it's all an if-then statement. If this word is detected, then that can happen, and that can be uploaded via CSV file. And then the last thing I want to show you is what we're going to be utilizing today in creating our rules is in regards to compliance. So with Trustify, we have our different options here. So GDPR, like we said, anything in the European Union, which I think we had, was it 46 or 31%? 31%. POPI, which is going to be our Brazilian, that's a regulation for South America. LGPD, similar to GDPR and POPI for Brazil. HIPAA, which we've talked about, which we're going to create a rule right now. PCI, which is going to be our credit card, and then also CCPA, which is going to be our California regulations. So let's go through and actually create a real rule and see how easy this is to set up. So what we're going to do is call this our HIPAA rule. So if the compliance in the email, body, or attachment, or even an image is detected, so one of the things to also note is Trustify utilizes OCR technology, which we're going to demonstrate here. So it doesn't have to just be, say, a patient ID, a drug name, even if it's a picture of, say, a CAT scan, which is what we're going to do, that will get picked up and then taken action accordingly. So for this, what we're going to say is if compliance of HIPAA is detected in an email, then what we're going to do is choose to encrypt this email. And what we're also going to do is notify our sender, because when our sender sends this out, they're not going to necessarily know that this email was encrypted. They're just going to be going about their day-to-day activity. So we'll say HIPAA info detected. And now we've added that rule. So you saw that it took 3 clicks. We did it in a matter of 2 minutes. And we've just applied a HIPAA rule to keep our entire organization secure from HIPAA information leaving the company in that short of a time. We're going to create one other rule here. This one, we're going to do something similar, but this is going to be our PCI rule. So we'll say anytime compliance is detected in an email in regards to PCI, so this will be anything in regards to credit card information, then what we're going to do is we're going to encrypt that content, but we're also going to require multi-factor authentication. And when I say multi-factor authentication, I'm not talking about myself that I have to multi-factor authenticate in order to send out an encrypted email. But what I'm going to do is force that recipient to multi-factor authenticate who they are to ensure that if that credit card reaches that inbox and say that inbox has been compromised by a hacker or someone else has access to that inbox, they'll have to multi-factor authenticate via one of Trustifi's 2FA authentication tools. And once again, we'll notify our sender, PCI info detected. And we've just added 2 rules. So now we've secured ourselves against any sort of medical information leaving our organization unsecure, and also secure ourselves against any sort of PCI credit card information leaving. So now what we'll do is go back to our Microsoft Outlook, and we're going to start sending some emails in real time, just as if we were a Trustify user who might not even realize that they have Trustify DLP technology working on the back end. So we'll send to our test account. This is going to be our CAT scan. See attached, and we're going to add a picture of our recent CAT scan. So we see this right here. We have a nice CAT scan image coming in from Isabella Jones. And we will send that across. So had we not created that rule right there, what would happen is when we click the send button, that email would have left the organization. It would have left unencrypted. It would have left unblocked. And we would have just sent HIPAA information across the public internet, which could have opened ourselves up for fines. And HIPAA fines can be quite large, exceeding hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, depending on the amount of records that have been exposed. So now we're going to do another example. This time we'll do the same thing, but now we're going to have, say, a real life example. This one, we are going to be emailing a colleague about lunch. So looking forward to seeing you for lunch today. This could be a colleague, a customer, a partner. This is something that we could send out any day of the week, all the time. There is no sensitive information in here. So we want to see this to see what happens with this email and how Trustify classifies it. And then last but not least, we'll give this same example. Maybe we're working with that person we just sent that email to, but now you know what? We just realized, unfortunately, we can't make lunch today, but we want to still give our credit card information so they can book it for us. Say, sorry about lunch, and send that out. So if you see right here, we have our credit card information in here. We haven't clicked anything. We're just sending this out our corporate email. And now let's see what happens from a recipient side. So we can see how Trustify is classifying this data and then what it's going to look like from an end user. So we see our 3 emails that came in from our to our test account. So this is the first email. And as we notice, this doesn't coming in like a normal Gmail account would. What we have here is Zach Schwartz has sent us a secure message via Trustify, and the content is encrypted until authentication is done. We see there's an attachment, but we still have to go through the process to authenticate and decrypt before we open up this message. One thing to note about this, and it's really why Trustify got into the data loss prevention email encryption industry, is what I'm about to show you is the process to decrypt the message. I'm sure all of us have worked with our healthcare providers or financial firms where we have to go through this process, download a, say, go to a Citrix environment, download a plugin, create a new username, create a password, remember all this, and it becomes extremely cumbersome to open up these emails. With Trustify, we try to make this as seamless and straightforward as possible. And the reason is to lower the abandonment rate of these encrypted emails. Also, everything that you see here is fully customizable. So what we recommend when we do roll this out to the field, that you do add your logos, your headers, your footers. This can be customized so it looks like it's coming from your organization. And there's no charge for that from Trustify. So as we go through the process to decrypt and open up the message is going to decrypt. And we see here it's asking for our telephone number because we utilize multi-factor authentication. So what I'm going to do is enter my my telephone number, and because that matches in the system, what's happening right now is I'm getting that PIN code on my phone, and that code number is, you guys will have to believe me for this, but it's 73373. And now we can decrypt this message, download the attachment, which I've just downloaded to my hard drive. And one of the really unique and interesting features about Trustify here is I also have the ability to reply back here. So for example, maybe my doctor or my insurance company just sent me this medical image. I can respond back saying, thank you, attached is my payment. And even though I don't have a Trustify account on this Gmail account, I'm able to respond back fully encrypted utilizing Trustify's 256-bit AES technology. And I can also add attachments. So I can add up to a 1 gig file transfer size. So for example, if I'm getting sent a blank contract, forms, whatever it may be, I can utilize this large file transfer even though I don't have a Trustify account. And this is going to be a huge value add for all of us when working with our clients, our partners, our patients, whoever it may be. And we'll send that back. So next what we want to do is take a look at these other emails that came through. So the first email, this was looking forward to seeing you for lunch today. This looks like a normal Gmail account, a normal Gmail email. This comes in plain text because what happened is this didn't get classified as HIPAA data. It also didn't get classified as PCI data. So this is going to come through in plain text. But the next email where we had that credit card number in place, here we see, thankfully, I was protected. I didn't break PCI policy. Also within Trustify, we do have a corporate policy that we're not allowed to send out corporate emails unencrypted. So thankfully, I am protected on both sides. And this email was automatically encrypted for me. So same thing, I'll go through that process. Type in my cell phone number. And once again, I'm going to have a different code here. This time the code is 90518 and decrypt. And then it's the same process. I can see that credit card number here and once again reply back. When talking about the multi-factor authentication, it's not something that we have to enact every time. It's something that we can create with rules. If we didn't have multi-factor authentication, that email would just open up natively. It's still going to be secure in transit. And then it's going to decrypt using Trustify's public-private key system on the back end in order to open up that email. Also, other forms of multi-factor authentication we can use. Trustify has single sign-on. So whether we're on Microsoft Outlook or Office 365, Yahoo, or Gmail, we can utilize our SSO. We can also utilize a user-defined password or a secondary email address. All of those are different ways to multi-factor authenticate. So what we want to do now is just go once to the back end of Trustify and see what happened with these emails. So here are the 3 emails that we sent. Here's our first one, and we can see the classification. So here we see this was a CT scan. It got a score of a 4. The second one, this was lunch, not sensitive at all. This had a score of a 0. And then the last one had credit card information in it, and we see this had a score of a 5. So we see this is how Trustify categorizes the data and then takes actions accordingly. So now that we've looked at this, what we can also see is I'm just going to pull up a report right here. And this is just a report that we pulled from Trustify. We pulled it into Microsoft Power BI. And here we can see, as an organization, what type of data is leaving the org. So here we see everything from website address, tutorial docs, Bitcoin keys, user credentials. But what we really want to focus on is our 5+ data. We want to see everybody's. So here's going to be our most secure information. That'll be our HIPAA docs, user credentials, credit cards, social security info. But one of the nice things about this with Trustify reporting is I can get a high-level visualization of what sort of information is leaving my organization on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly level. And then I can also filter down into the individual user. So I'll click on myself, and I can see here I've sent out 39 emails this month so far with credit card information. And that's typically because I do a lot of demos. But in the event that I wasn't, say next month, all of a sudden I send out 700 emails, with credit card data in it, what's going to happen is the IT admin is going to get a real-time alert from Trustify that there is a potential anomaly in the system. So once we create a baseline of our users, what we can do is see if there are any anomalies to see, is there a data loss event happening? Is there a piece of malware that's taken over that device? Whatever it may be, we'll then work with the admin within the Trustify account to either lock down that account or get a resolution to see what is going on. So that pretty much concludes our demo for today. So now what we'll do is open this up to any questions that we might have.
Thank you, Zach. That was great. We do have a couple of questions that came in. So the first one is, just so I'm clear, when you send an encrypted email to someone outside your organization, when they reply back, that comes back encrypted too, even if they don't have Trustify in place?
Absolutely. So that was what we showed with that encrypted reply button. A user could always just respond back to just that notification screen, which would be unencrypted. But what we highly recommend is utilizing Trustify's encrypted reply. There's no cost to it for an end user. And when creating policies with our customers or with our patients, whatever it may be, it's extremely important that they utilize that in order to keep their data safe and your data safe. But like I said, there is no charge for that.
Great. Another question, do we need to have your router to connect to your WAN? In other words, do we need to replace our router to be connected to your WAN?
So absolutely not. Trustify is a software as a service platform. So as long as we have connectivity to the internet, no matter what LAN or WAN you're on, you're going to be compatible with Trustify. So as you have to be on Microsoft Outlook 2013 or greater, Microsoft Office 365, OWA, or G Suite. So we're going to be compatible with any of those. So what the installation looks like is we're just creating a connector from your exchange to Trustify's encrypted servers. So it doesn't matter if you're working on desktop, on mobile, whatever sort of client you're working on, as long as you're sending emails out of your exchange, what's going to happen is that email is going to get rerouted from the exchange to Trustify. We'll classify that data, then see if it applies to any of the rules created. If so, we'll wrap those data packets in our 256-bit AES encryption and then send them across the public internet fully secure.
Awesome. Okay, the next one is, I have hundreds of users in my organization, but only 20 to 25 that have email sensitive information. Can I purchase Trustify for only the specific users that require outbound encryption capabilities?
So absolutely, great question. So that is something you can do with Trustify. And it's also what differentiates us between a lot of the other data loss prevention competitors out there, is we can segregate this traffic to, say, a certain group that you have within the organization. Maybe it's your HR group or your accounts payable, whoever it may be. So we can apply that to that small group. It's something that if we're utilizing for that, it makes a lot of sense. But it's also something when we've talked about in the beginning, if we do have users on email, this isn't just because we know that that group is only sending out secure information, but it's important to get some of those analytics about the entire organization to see maybe you do have a rogue agent in there. It's unlikely, or you have a piece of malware that takes over someone's email address. But when you do deploy this to the entire domain, the analytics that you receive, I think, are extremely valuable. But the answer is yes, you can deploy this to a small user group.
Great. Okay. The next one, as an example, how does Trustify identify that a series of numbers in an email is actually a credit card number?
So Trustify has done a lot of work on this to mitigate as many false positives as possible. There are ways, depending on, there's the 16-digit numbers, there's the American Express, which I believe is 15 numbers. So depending on the different characters within that number group, we can determine if it's a social security number, a credit card number. So if I were to send an email right now and I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, up to 16 digits, that would not get classified as a credit card number. So typically with most of the credit card agencies, they start with a certain range group. So we have that built into our system in order to mitigate those false positives. But one other thing I also want to mention, if there are other sorts of characteristics of number ranges that you need to detect for your organization, whether that be, say, an employee ID, a vendor ID, product ID, whatever it may be, we can integrate that into the system to create a custom data loss prevention rule just for your use case.
And one last question, how does Trustify Licensing work and how much does it cost?
Sure. So Trustify Licensing, it's on a per mailbox basis. So what we're doing is we're protecting each individual email address. So based on how many users you want to bring on, in that case that we talked about before, or how many email addresses you have within the entire domain, that's how it's going to be priced out. There are different discount rates based on volume. So whether it's 1 to 99, 99 to 500, 500 to 1,000, whatever it may be, you'll have different discount rates. But in order to get pricing, I highly recommend that you reach out to your local CTI rep who has all the information. We can set up custom demos, proof of concepts, and have all pricing run through CTI.
Great. Okay, there is one last question that came through. If I accidentally send an encrypted email to an unintended recipient and realize immediately after sending, is there a way to retract that message?
So that is a great question. Sounds like someone's been utilizing Trustify before, but yes, the answer is yes. So unlike Microsoft Outlook, which I think we've all experienced in the past, whether we sent the email or someone sent it to us, then a couple minutes later, we get that recall message button, a recall message notification, but we can still see the original email, except we now want to look even closer to see why it was recalled. With Trustify, if we do send something out, we have full analytics on that email. So first and foremost, we can see when it was delivered, when it was opened, when it was read, if anything was downloaded, if it was forwarded, printed. We have all those analytics. And what we can also do is block an email. So unlike Microsoft Outlook, we can do this in real time where they'll no longer have access to the email. Or what's even cooler is what we can do is change the content. So if we say sent that to client A, it was supposed to go to client B, we can change the attachments, we can change the messaging. So from their perspective, if they haven't opened it yet, or even if they have opened it and then go to reopen it, that messaging will change, the attachments will change, and there'll be a timestamp of when all that information happened.
Great. Thank you, Zach. And that concludes our webinar today. I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us. And if you have any questions that were not addressed during the Q&A section, please feel free to reach out to me at mlatshaw@consultech.com, and I'll be sure to get some answers for you. So thanks again to Zach and the team at Trustify, and I hope the rest of your day is a safe and happy one. Take care, everyone.